wrestling as like I can kind of get in. And as soon as I reached out to him, he was like, yeah, we need someone to actually manage our social media. And as soon as I got in there, they just handed me the passwords almost instantly. And I was running their Twitter, Instagram, recording their matches, providing content for them. It was kind of awesome how much, just hands-on I was able to get right from the jump.
So then you start taking classes, right? Standard journalism classes, intro classes, etc.
Yep.
And what else did you do down there outside of wrestling? Did you work at like WUB and stuff or no?
Yeah. So when you start, there's going to be all these introductions at college and fairs, and everyone wants you to get involved and all these different things. And I just kind of was like, me and my buddies and roommates just went and kind of was like, all right, let's just see what everything's about. I mean, my freshman year, I even joined like the water ski club just as like a random, because I grew up water skiing. So yeah, I mean, besides the wrestling team, you try almost a little bit of everything. You try the main student publication. Maybe you go to the newspaper. Maybe you go to the magazine that every college campus has. You almost try a little bit of everything, and then by your junior year, sophomore year, maybe senior year, you're like, all right, I've kind of figured out what I want to focus on. So I don't know, freshman year for me, I was like, I'm going to do wrestling. I'm going to get in with the athletic department and see where they need help. We had like AVW and WUB, which was two of our student run publications. I was just trying to get my hand in everything and then just see what stuck.
Did you get paid for it?
I got paid for the wrestling team. It was a stipend where they would give me like maybe like $250 a semester. So nothing crazy, but everything else, no, you don't get paid for.
Okay. And then what was the first internship?
The first internship was actually in Westlake, Ohio, which is probably 10 minutes west of Cleveland, called Stevens Strategic Communication, just a random PR firm where I would go in and do, people would talk and then I would type it out. I'm forgetting what the name of that is, where you're just copywriting what the people are, you just watch the video and you make the closed captionings.
Yeah.
That's all I was doing. Didn't get paid for it, but I looked at that as like this was the summer of my freshman going into sophomore year. I was like, hey, at least it's something I can put on my resume. And especially at a young age. It was a not really big name firm, and I was just doing literally just the grunt work, making no money, but it was at least something where I could be like, hey, besides college and wrestling team, I can actually put a company on my resume. And then that kind of opened the door for like my first big internship was Fox Sports Ohio, which I did after my sophomore year, the summer of my sophomore year. I think Mr. Lowry actually helped me get in contact with one of the producers with Fox Sports Ohio. And then that's through all this, that's the big thing. My whole thing was, how do I get an interview? And then once you get to that step, that's where you're like, all right, now I got to nail the interview before I get the internship.
So what'd you do for that internship? What kind of stuff did you get to do?
So they rotated me. They have basically 3 shows that go on at Fox Sports Ohio, stuff that surrounds the Cavs, stuff that surrounds the Indians, and then a host show. This guy named Bruce Drennan just accepts callers. So I kind of did like a rotation. It was just the summer. So like every 2 or 3 weeks I would rotate, whether I'm working on the Cavs broadcast. And this was much more of a production internship, I should say. So when the Cavs I started with the Indians, would just go to the ballpark and kind of run cables, help set up shots. And then that was before the game. And then during the game, I would just sit and watch the game. And then when the game ended, I'd go back to the set and run cables, ask questions. Really just kind of, this internship was more or less just shadowing and doing little things here and there. And so then every 2 weeks I'd move to the studio show that was in Cleveland, just show up, maybe I'd answer the phone lines, maybe I'd set up shots, maybe I'd run cables. But for the most part, this one was just shadowing and talking to people in the industry and kind of understanding where I kind of want to make my next move once it was over.
Were you there when they won the title or no? You were already gone?
I was there. So the I guess funny thing is after the second series, Fox Sports Ohio no longer has like the broadcast rights. It switches to ABC. But since it was such a big, madness in the city, they're just like, hey, with this internship, you're just going to take this week off because it was the finals. But I had all my like credentials. So I still went down to Cleveland. I still kind of was around that atmosphere of the Cavs winning it. I wasn't working just because it switched from Fox Sports Ohio to ABC during the finals.
Okay, and then the big one, I think, looking back at it, was the Hornets.
Yeah.
You were able to get the Hornets because you had the PR firm and Fox Sports on a resume, plus the wrestling team and everything else you were doing. I would think a lot of people want to work for Michael Jordan's team, right?
Correct. And yeah. I'd say the bigger thing about the Hornets was I got the Fox Sports Ohio. That was the summer after my sophomore year. And then going into the summer after my junior year, I'm like, all right, I need to follow Fox Sports Ohio with another big time internship. And I wasn't necessarily landing anything for that summer. I had a couple interviews. I even flew out to Seattle and interviewed with the Seahawks, but didn't get that one. And I just wasn't getting any of those like big internships that I was looking for going into, this was after my junior year. So I decided I'm just going to apply to every MLB, NFL, NHL, NBA team that has like an internship open for their season. And I ended up getting interviews with the Hornets, Pittsburgh Penguins, and Nashville Predators. And at that point, I was like, I honestly am not that big into NBA or hockey. But NBA is a bigger platform that could probably help me out. So that internship that I got was September through March. So I took the entire year off school, did like a little gap year, didn't take any extra classes, moved to Charlotte in September of that year and started working for the Hornets, which was a 8-month unpaid internship.
8 months unpaid. Okay, so how'd you survive? What'd you do? You wait tables or something, right?
Yeah, as soon as I got there, I started applying to a bunch of restaurants and started waiting tables. And then I also got like started doing the thing to get like become a Postmates driver. So it was internship, serving, and Postmates deliveries.
Okay, I remember that whole debate and the move, and you taking that. What were some of the stuff you did for the Hornets?
So basically, I would come in, and there was just, it was more or less when the Hornets were in the building, I was working. So it wasn't like a set, like I was coming in Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. When the Hornets were there, I was going to practices and gathering, shooting content. I was the shooter when our interviewer would interview the players. And then I was just making packages. Basically, I'd have 3 videos to either edit or create before the game. During the game, I would make like 1 package with the fans. And then after game, again, 2 or 3 post, interviews, packages, highlights, whatever it may be. And then this would just go to the website. And then we had like a studio show that we would do too that I'd help out on. So really just kind of running around and creating the content, kind of taking lead. It was kind of a cool situation because, again, like the Indian stuff, it's a lot before the game and a lot after the game, but not much during. And the Hornets, at least, I was like, hey, I'm not just going to sit around during these games. Like, can I at least think of packages to create with the fans, go around, shoot different content? And they were all for that. I remember a few games, they even let me like sit courtside and shoot photography because at this point I wasn't the best photographer, but I was like, I want to practice. So they even let me do that. So certain things like that, after a few months of getting the hang of it, they kind of just like, all right, what do you want to do? And then that's where I kind of first got my glimpse of switching from like broadcast to social media, because the social media manager, sometimes I'd shadow her and help her out during the games.
Okay. So tell them about that Saturday night when you were off and the Hornets were out of town and the UFC came to town.
Right. So, like I said, when the Hornets are in the building, I'm always working. When they're away, it's not as much. But after each away game, I do create just like one highlight package with one of our talent. She does like a little recap. So like I am responsible for that away package basically every time. But the UFC came to Charlotte, and so the UFC Fighting Championship, Conor McGregor, and before COVID, they would basically just travel to each different cities, different markets, and they came through to Charlotte. And me growing up with the wrestling team, kind of a fan of the UFC growing up, I just reached out to my manager and was like, "Hey, I'm really into this UFC thing. Anything that you guys need help with during the week, because the Hornets also manage the Spectrum Center, the arena they play in's social media. So anytime like music artists would come through, they would also manage that too." And I was like, I will help you out. Anything you need UFC. So even during the week, we did a couple interviews with fighters, and there was like open workouts that I would go and kind of gather content. And so then my manager was like, all right, I will take the highlights package that you need to edit, because the Hornets were playing an away game. You can work this event as long as all of your other work's done. I got to work the event, and really I was like, I will do anything you need me to do. I want to be up close with this sport. I'll do anything. And they actually put me octagon side, and I was taking photos octagon side, grabbing videos with my phone, sending it away. And it was a kind of cool moment, because the social media managers who kind of like run it, and like I said, they run, if Justin Bieber comes through and performs, they have to run that too. And for this, they're like, this is the most content we've ever gotten for an event. And so I was like, oh, that feels pretty cool. But basically, I just stayed in contact with the people I met that night. And 1 month after the Hornets internship ended, I moved out to Vegas to do a UFC internship.
So while your friends were all, I mean, you were turning 21, all your friends were down in Athens, guys you went to high school with, your roommates, and you left for a year to go to Charlotte. And then you came back and graduated, right?
Yep.
How'd you get to ESPN, and what was that like? You guys,
yeah. So, yeah.
Through the chronology.
Yeah. So I was a little bit ahead, even though I took this year off. I only had 1 semester left, so I was graduating a semester early. So when I'm in Vegas for the summer, I look at my manager. I'm like, hey, I'm already here in Vegas. You guys are about to hire someone else. Why don't you just hire me, and I'll stay here in Vegas? And he's like, no, you need to go get your degree. And I was like, all right, that's fine. So I went back to OU once the UFC internship ended. And he's like, once you graduate in December, we're bringing you back, bud. No worries. So the whole time, it's my senior year of college, and I'm like, I already got a job lined up. I'm chilling. And then I graduate, and they're like, hey, some things happened here at UFC. We're not going to be able to hire you right away. And so then I'm like, oh, no. What am I going to do now? I'm about to graduate in 2 weeks, and I don't have a job. And, as a graduating senior, all the anxiety and stress, and you're like, oh, no, what am I going to do? But like 2 weeks before my finals happen, I'm just on Twitter, and I see through like someone retweeted it. The social media director at ESPN tweets, hey, do you work in social media, know the UFC, and love like editing videos or something? I know it was UFC social media and editing. I forget exactly the words she said, but I just slid in her DMs, and I was like, you're not going to find anyone better. And she messaged me back and was like, did you work under this person and this person? And I was like, yes. She reached out to my manager at the UFC. And thankfully they had a good review for me. And I would say after I took my finals, 2 weeks later, I accepted a job with ESPN and moved out to Bristol January of 2020.
Bristol's in the middle of nowhere, midway between Boston and New York. Not a whole lot happening in Bristol, right? So
No. You have to drive 30 minutes to do anything.
Yeah. But you worked social media for ESPN covering UFC predominantly.
Right. So that was my in. is ESPN is not necessarily a easy place to get hired, and let alone my position wasn't even like most people start as like PAs, so production assistants, and my title was AP, so associate producer. So even getting in with a higher title than basically their baseline entry level was insane in my opinion. But it was because the UFC knowledge I had. I almost had that like niche of, again, everyone kind of wants to go basketball, football, but like thankfully I grew up loving UFC and wrestling. And so the UFC kind of niche allowed me to sneak my way in and work in social media. I was running their Snapchat shows. So we had a weekly UFC Snapchat show that would air every Friday. And then once I got the hang of that, I moved on to like, I don't know if anyone's seen Sports Center on Snapchat, and working on those shows. And then I started driving to New York City every Wednesday and helping out with some of the studio shows. And that's where I would shoot with my talent. And it just kind of snowballed into more and more and more.
All right. So now at UFC, we watched part of one of the videos that you sent. You do the profiles, you do all the social media, 100% UFC, living in Vegas.
Right. So it was kind of cool. When I was at ESPN, UFC reached out to me and was like, "Hey, we want to hire you on full time now." And I could kind of like, with ESPN, they originally had me in a 1-year contract, so I could kind of like negotiate between the two. ESPN actually was like, "Hey, where do you want to live? We have offices in LA, New York, Charlotte, but I still like UFC more, so I picked Vegas and UFC." And now they were able to bring me in because of a Snapchat deal that they started. Since I had the Snapchat experience of producing shows for that platform with ESPN, UFC had signed a deal where every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we'd be releasing Snapchat shows. So it started as I just have to manage that and manage a couple other of our Snapchat content that would go out in our like more long form Snapchat stuff. And then that snowballed into me kind of being our main video shooter editor for the social team. Granted, if I need to live tweet an event or run the Instagram, run Facebook, I can definitely do that. I just prefer to be more of the content creator. So on a given fight night, I'm the one kind of going in and out of locker rooms, grabbing content with fighters, going up to the cage, shooting pictures, basically just grabbing anything that happens around the event and shooting it off via Slack, which is the platform we use just to get content around. Because the UFC, even though it's, you see it as UFC, it's a very international sport. So we have a UFC Europe, UFC Australia, UFC Brazil, etc., Australia, China. So not just because Conor McGregor's fighting doesn't mean like an up and coming Europe prospect. So I have to pay attention to that guy too and get it out to that, regional office. And so there's almost like a balancing act of getting content for everyone, not just the global page. But yeah, that's what I do now, and I really like it.
Awesome. All right. Questions for Nolan about his internships, about OU, about life in Vegas. Oh, I'm so jealous. On your mic. Yeah, I think it'll work.
Okay. So, from all the internships and stuff that you like did in college, how do you think that like stuff like got you into ESPN and all the jobs that you like got now?
Yeah, I would say so. Like my like thinking was almost like, all right, 2 years from now, what do I want? And I think my freshman year, I was thinking 2 years from now, I want to be in that NBA role with the Hornets. Whether I was like, I want to be major league, MLB, NFL, NHL. So I was almost thinking like, what do I have to do freshman and sophomore year then to get to that spot? It's almost like, I forget who said it, but there's a quote that's like, preparation, opportunity, they meet, it's nice. So like that was my whole thing, was like, no matter what internship pops up, whether it's production, broadcast, shooting, editing, video, anything that kind of we cover, I was like, I'm going to be prepared, because if this is the one that gets me in the door, I'm taking it. So I wasn't going to just limit myself to like, I'm only taking production internships where I can be on air. I'm only taking editing internships where I'm just in the cube editing videos all day. Like I said, my first internship was communication, then production, then video editing, then social media. So I got like a nice little well-rounded grasp. And then that way, when ESPN reaches out, it's almost like, yeah, which skill do you need me to plug in? I can fit anywhere.
Okay, good question. Mia, go ahead.
So, like,
There we go. We'll do
should
that.
I keep my mic off?
Yeah, you can turn it on.
Okay. So, like, when you first started, how'd you manage, like, having a social life and working something that you, like, didn't get paid for and having a job?
So is that at college or with the Hornets internship?
Either, both.
Either. Yeah. I think freshman year of college is this like basically one big year to figure everything out. You figure out when you're going to go out with your friends. You figure out how much time you're going to dedicate to class. You figure out just basically how to grow up. And for me, you know, I put a precedent on the wrestling team. And, you know, there's some Saturdays that I was just like, hey, I'm going to miss this weekend because I'm traveling with the team. And so it's almost like you have to decide for yourself. Do I want to spend freshman year with no responsibilities and just, you know, focusing on class and making friendships and going out, which is fine. Or you got to kind of determine, do you want to, you know, find a balance of, all right, I have friends, I have this obligation that I'm devoting to. My big thing with the wrestling team was they could always count on me. I would say being dependable is something you should kind of like start figuring out right away. Because at any time the coach could text me and be like, hey, I need you here. And I'd figure out how to, you know, provide whatever he needs for the players, wrestlers, and the team. So I'd say dependability is what you got to focus on. And then everything else, you kind of just figure it out. I was fortunate where my roommates were two of my closest friends. I just grew up, knew each other since we were like 6 years old. So then other friends, they come eventually, and, you know, you make friends with the clubs you join in. So it's almost like once you go through it, you're like, all right, that wasn't that difficult.
Okay, another question. Go ahead, Reese.
Hi, I'm actually going to OU next semester, and I'm in the journalism program. And I was wondering, what makes you stand out from other people, and how can I use my advantage being in the program now here at high school, and how can that help me stand out from other freshmen?
I got you. Yeah. So, like my whole thing is, and I'm sure Mr. Lowry has told you guys this before, is, but when you start college, you guys are a foot ahead of everyone. You already have some of like the broadcast skills that other people are catching up on. And when you go to OU and you go to WOUB, which is the student publication, so they have like news shows, sports shows, whatever it may be, and you go in and you're like, hey, I want to be on air first week. I want to shoot football games first week. They're going to look at you like, all right, freshman, back of the line. And for me, I did the same thing. I went in and I was like, hey, I'm ready to go, guns a-blazing, whatever you guys need, I'm ready. And I honestly didn't even start out at WOUB because of this, because they were like, hey, you know, since you're a freshman, kind of take a seat back. That's where I was like, all right, the wrestling team's kind of my in, because that's one of my interests. I just went to the athletic department, found their like video guys, and was like, hey guys, whatever you need help with, whether it's shooting soccer games, shooting volleyball games, whatever it may be, I just want to get experience right now and start working stuff. And you can just be upfront with them with your freshman year, kind of going back to the first question, be like, hey, I want to work one game a week. And then they'll work with you. Or if you're like, hey, whenever you need me, call me. I'm ready to work every single day if it's available. And just kind of figure out what you want to do. So for me, it was more of, let me venture off into these other niches and kind of figure out what I can really shine at. And then I kind of later, like my sophomore years, when I came back to WOUB, and they were all like, all right, now we notice you've kind of got the skills and everything. You can do whatever you want now. And that's not to say that, you know, you shouldn't start off at WOUB. Just almost understand that you're going to get this kind of flack of wait your turn.
Yeah,
But
any school they go to, you're going to get the same sort of thing. You got to prove
yeah. And so my approach was, all right, I'm going to pop off at the wrestling team. I'm going to pop off with some of these other things really quick, and then I'm going to come back, which that was my style. Doesn't have to be your style.
Go ahead, Juju.
When you started like scheduling like your classes in college, did you schedule them like in a particular way so that you were always free, like to do like special games and stuff?
Yeah. Granted, I was a little lucky. So I have arthritis. So I was a part of like student accessibility services. Every college and every university has student accessibility services. So if you have anything, diabetes, I guess arthritis was me, any kind of thing that you would need a little bit of service, you can kind of get set up with them. So I got to schedule my classes before everyone, which helped me out. Now I know that's kind of cheating the system a little bit, but when you're scheduling, just be aware of that. You might have to do a semester where you have a lot of early classes. You might have to do a semester where, you're front loading everything where all of your classes are on Tuesday and Thursday. Again, it's kind of like freshman year, you figure it out. You figure out like how much time I can dedicate around. And then sophomore, junior, senior year, like, all right, I've got this. I can plan everything out. I can do it. So freshman year, again, it's more like take things with a grain of salt and just don't be like, sometimes I'd get so hard on myself, like, oh, why didn't I do that right? Or why did I schedule this class? Just go with the flow. And then by the time sophomore year reaches out, you're like, all right, I understand I have this responsibility. I know I want to do these kind of classes, and you kind of schedule it and format it more around what you want to do. And you can also go back and change things. I think what a big thing is like for average is like 15 credit hours. Sometimes I would schedule 20 credit hours worth of classes, and then I would always drop at least one class. And it's kind of like a trick where like, especially freshman year, you have the time to catch up on that. Obviously, like your journalism and anything that's dedicated for your major, you kind of have to plan on keeping. But some of those prerequisites and, liberal arts studies kind of classes, sign up for 18, 20 credit hours and then just plan on dropping one. And then you're like, all right, now I got these set of classes. Let's rock with it.
Good question. Did you ever meet Michael Jordan?
I never met him, but I did like walk past him. He smells really nice.
All right, good to know. Side scoop we're getting.
Yeah. I think you guys, I mentioned this to Lowry and he probably doesn't know her, but I'm shooting with Addison Rae this week, which is kind of cool. She's a big
so I would feel cool. Now I know who she is.
Yeah, she's kind of a big deal with the younger ones. She reached out to us because she likes UFC. Originally, we were going to shoot with her dad, but she's like, no, I want to come by. So she's coming by Vegas this week to do some content with us.
That's exciting. Cool. Any other questions for Nolan? We kind of spilled out a lot of it during the opening, the chronology of everything.
Right, yeah.
Well, Nolan, I guess if you had to give one piece of advice to kids who think they might be interested in this, because sports is fun, right? TV, and this is going to be really fun. What advice would that be, regardless of where they go to school or regardless of what they even decide to major in? They don't have to major in broadcasting to work in sports TV. They can major in anything. What advice would you give them for when they arrive?
Figure out, for me, at least what's led to my success, if I'm going to go right personal, figure out what your thing is and be the best at it. I love the sport of fighting so much. I think I could tell you a story about each fight that has ever happened. I could go down the history of every UFC champion. I could go on for hours and hours until you guys are just bored about how much UFC knowledge I have. But to me, that like passion about it is what makes me good at my job. Every event that I go to, and granted, I'm super fortunate that I get to fly to Abu Dhabi and Fight Island, and I'm going to Jacksonville next week for an event. And all these things kind of are part of the gig, but like at the core of it, I'm one of the biggest UFC fans there is. And that has kind of like almost motivated me to land this position, motivated me to kind of make that nice little smooth skill set. Everyone's going to tell you to be versatile. Everyone's going to tell you to be dependable and hardworking. Everyone's going to tell you to, follow your dream, blah, blah. But I would say just figure out what that thing is you like. And you're not going to figure that out freshman year. Freshman year, I was like, I'm going to be the, reporter for the Cleveland sports station, be the next Jay Crawford or whatever it may be. And then I realized, I don't really like that. Sophomore year, I was like, I want to be that guy editing E60s, doing 30 for 30s.
That's what I want.
Yeah. And then I was like, ooh, long format. That's a lot of work. And then it was junior year. I was like, all right, social media and kind of doing a little bit of everything. That's my spot. So I know that's a long-winded answer, but that's what I would say.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the time. You have to work today?
Yeah, I'm going to go into the office. So I got a 3-hour time difference, and I'm just going to hop in the office after this call.
All right. Cool. Thanks again.
Of course. If you guys need anything, hit me up.
All right. See you, buddy. Yeah. Leave the call. Yep. Now we have a show to plan. Hold on.